and that will further come down. And the fact is that the world has allowed China to become the world's factory. And the world which had allowed China to become the world factories can also undo it. And
Okay.
when the decoupling begins, onshoring begins and gains steam, it's only not a question of if, it's a question of when.
So, Professor Harshpant, so it's a question of when, because it already actually was beginning to go. It had started earlier. People were already moving out of China. Companies were reshoring in a sense because costs were going up also in China, and they needed to diversify in a sense. You can't have put all your eggs in one basket. So now, what do you see? I mean, do you see this accelerating at a certain pace?
Yes, I think some of the trends that we were witnessing before the advent of COVID-19, uh, all those trends have been accentuated by both by Chinese behavior in the initial stages of COVID-19, with the mismanagement, and Chinese behavior on the geopolitical side since over the last 3 to 4 months. And I think if you combine them both, you look at a world order that is in tremendous flux. You look at a world order which where countries are willing to stand up to China increasingly, even those countries who are in doubt. So you can go
Okay.
back a few months, and then see how UK's decision, Huawei, was a different one. They decided to give it the partial access. Today they have said no, it can't. It is not possible. So clearly, those countries who were willing to engage with China, even though it was limited engagement, even those countries are having a rethink on their policies. So clearly, we are looking at
Okay.
a larger framework where China is under pressure, and my belief is that Chinese behavior today has less to do with Chinese strength and more to do with Chinese vulnerabilities.
I
And
see.
those
Okay.
vulnerabilities domestically are being reflected in the way China is, just flail. Chinese leadership, Communist Party is just flailing around, creating crises where none exist, trying
All
to
right.
browbeat smaller neighbors. So clearly, there is tension within the Chinese Communist Party. There are tensions within China, which are being reflected in the way Chinese foreign policy is being shaped up, and that will have consequences for the communist leadership. But alas, it will also have some short-term consequences for the world order because of whatever we are witnessing today. So I think we are moving
Yes.
into a phase where Chinese pressure and
Okay.
global pushback
Let's
both
move
are
back.
going to be very, 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 very substantial.
Let's bring in Ambassador Chakrabarti once again. So, under the current tensions, then, could the South China Sea become a flashpoint? Because we know that there are military assets of the United States and China in the sea, in the South China Sea area currently.
Well, one can never rule out a flashpoint in the sense that since such large assets of the US are there, and China obviously must be feeling the heat, it all depends on who does what. I think the US can play a waiting game, leave its the two sort of aircraft carriers and the accompanying fleet there, and keep a watch on what China does. If China fires the first shot, then I think there will be conflict, and China will suffer so badly that it will regret uh, what the kind of actions that he has taken. But I think I don't know whether any provocation will come from the American side. But I
Okay.
think the provocation may come from the Chinese side, as it has come in Ladakh, for example, against us, or in Hong Kong, for example. So I think we are looking at the Communist Party of China, which is behaving in a very abnormal manner. Because
Indeed.
you see, ultimately, the outcome of all this is the question: what is China gaining? Is it
Indeed. What
gaining
is
something? Is it gaining in terms of its national interest by sort of consolidating all those who are now pushing back at China? I don't understand the Chinese philosophy or its thinking. Either it's coming, as Harsh rightly said, from from a struggle within the Communist Party. Otherwise, I don't see any rational behavior in all this. I mean, unless China thinks
It
that
doesn't
it has
seem to be
become so
rational at all.
strong,
Yes.
it has become so strong that nobody can challenge it anymore, and it can do anything it wants. So I don't know. I
Okay.
don't think China believes that, but because I'm sure there are many cool heads in China who realize that they cannot take on the Americans. Well,
Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, so I mean, whether the cooler heads will prevail or not is a question. But what about the viability of the Quad to counter Chinese aggression and ambitions at this time? Because, I mean, the countries involved are Japan, India, Australia, and the US.
Well, again, I think I will send a thank you note to President Xi Jinping to enable the countries to drop their hesitation. Many countries were hesitant. Quad had taken baby steps, but the way China has behaved, I think countries have realized that there is no choice but to take China on and push back. China is a bully which can only be stared down, and the more you accommodate it. So Quad, I think, will become increasingly important. Already it has been, the dialogue level has been raised to the level of foreign ministers. There is talk of Quad Plus, countries like South Korea, New Zealand, Vietnam, Indonesia, possibly France, Brazil are being also spoken of. I am not sure whether it is time to expand Quad, but Quad is going to, because these are 4 democratic countries, important countries, and these 4 countries, especially Australia and India, are now being spoken of in practically every grouping, whether we are talking of G11 or G10 or D10. So I guess Quad will come of age, and the role of Quad has to be defined now, agenda has to be defined now, and there will be no choice left but to also include security as one of the important items of the agenda, because we have reached a stage where you cannot allow the prevalent security architecture to be disrupted in the way China is seeking to disrupt it.
Okay, final question from you, Professor Harsh Pant. It is about India and China and 4th round of commander level talks. Now, after that, the comment that came out was that the process is complex and needs to be constantly verified, though both sides are committed to completely withdrawing troops, and we are moving towards, at least India has said that we want to achieve status quo ante. How do you view all this? How do you view the progress that's being made?
Well, as was expected, the progress is slow, it's deliberate, it's, I think, rightfully so. And India has very rightfully said that we will verify every single step that the Chinese are taking. I think that now the issue is, how can India trust China? And I think that's a big question that is now overhangs all this engagement. And clearly, any move that has happened so far is basically a move towards, disengagement that has happened. They are very, very tentative. And India will be very, very cautious moving forward. We have seen how core commanders have reacted very, very cautiously. And that is, I think, very important at this stage, given where we are coming from in the last 1 month. But I think the larger issue for China and for China to recognize is, as you were talking earlier about Quad, is that, even those in India or elsewhere in the world who were taking a more cautious approach towards China are now looking at this new reality and asking, what did we gain by being so cautious? What did we gain by making a case that, look, we need to engage China? Because engagement clearly has not had the intended effect. All the questions, whether they are about economic interdependence, whether they are about technological interdependence, whether they are about academic, socio-cultural exchanges, they all become moot today in the climate where China is, almost mercilessly pursuing its aggressive agenda, which is primarily based on muscle power. So what I think China needs to recognize is that there is a climate building up around China, around the world,
right,
which will make it very difficult for China to achieve its national aims, which, as the Chinese leaders have, they constantly tell us, it's about, economic prosperity for the people. But I don't think that the path that they've chosen will lead to that if the present trends continue. And for countries like India, therefore, caution and verification at every step is the most important alternative that we have.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Our boundary negotiations are going on.
We'll leave it there. Thanks very much, Professor Harsh Pant, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, and Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti. Thanks very much for being with us. Now we're moving on to our next story then. The Indian Army, in a statement, has said that China and India are committed to complete disengagement of troops, and the process is intricate that requires constant verification. This is after the 4th round of marathon military talks on de-escalation of the situation in eastern Ladakh. The Army said that senior commanders of Indian and Chinese military reviewed the progress on implementation of the first phase of disengagement, and they discussed further steps to complete disengagement. Here's the detailed story.
After the fourth round of commander-level talks between Indian and Chinese troops on easing of tensions in East Ladakh, the Indian Army has said that both countries are committed to completely withdrawing their troops. However, the process is complex and needs to be constantly verified. The statement issued by the Army said, the senior commanders reviewed the progress on implementation of the first phase of disengagement and discussed further steps to ensure complete disengagement. The two sides remain committed to the objective of complete disengagement. This process is intricate and requires constant verification. They are taking it forward through regular meetings at diplomatic and military level.
Both sides have agreed at specific points to redeploy towards their regular posts on their respective sides of the LAC. These are mutually agreed reciprocal actions to be taken by both sides. And as I have already conveyed, it is an ongoing process. This mutual redeployment should not be misrepresented. There is absolutely no change with respect to India's position on the line of actual control. We are fully committed to observing and respecting the LAC. Any unilateral attempts to change the status quo along the LAC are not acceptable.
India has made it clear that both countries have engaged in discussions through established military and diplomatic channels to address the prevailing situation along the LAC. Tensions in East Ladakh increased after 20 Indian soldiers were martyred in a violent clash between Indian and Chinese soldiers on 15th of June in Galwan Valley. Since then, both countries have engaged in a process of stepped-up dialogue to work out the process of disengagement, which requires constant verification. It is being taken forward through regular meetings at diplomatic and military levels. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh will visit Ladakh on Friday. He is likely to take stock of the situation in the area and will be accompanied by Army Chief General M.M. Narawane. This will be Defence Minister's first visit to Ladakh since tension erupted between the two countries. Newsnight Desk, DD News.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will deliver a keynote address at this year's high-level summit of the segment of the United Nations Economic and Social Council session on Friday at the United Nations in New York. The Prime Minister will be speaking at the valedictory session along with the Prime Minister of Norway and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The annual high-level segment, it convenes a diverse group of high-level representatives from the government, the private sector, civil society and academia. The theme of this year's high-level segment is multilateralism after COVID-19. What kind of UN do we need at the 75th anniversary? Set against the changing international environment and the COVID-19 pandemic, this session will focus on critical forces shaping the course of multilateralism and explore ways to bolster the global agenda through strong leadership, effective international institutions, a broadening of participation and enhanced significance of global public goods. This will be the first opportunity for Prime Minister Narendra Modi to address the broader UN membership since India's overwhelming election as a non-permanent member of the Security Council on the 17th of June for the term 21-22. The theme of the high-level segment of ECOSOC on the 75th anniversary of the founding of the UN also resonates with India's Security Council priority, wherein we have called for reformed multilateralism in a post-COVID-19 world. It also recalls India's role as the holder of the inaugural presidency of ECOSOC, and the Prime Minister had earlier delivered the keynote address virtually at the 70th session and the 70th anniversary of ECOSOC. This happened in January of 2016. This week at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development, India also presented its second voluntary national review at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development 2020. The report was prepared and presented by Niti Aayog. The massive process saw more than 50 sub-national and national consultations from 14 population groups, including women, elderly, children, people living with HIV and persons with disability. In his opening remarks, the Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog, Rajiv Kumar, expressed solidarity with all the countries who have been grappling with the challenges because of COVID-19 pandemic.
We should all obliterate all divisions and distinctions amongst us and come together to try and convert the prevailing situation into an opportunity for accelerating our progress towards achieving the SDG targets. On behalf of the Government of India, its people and my own behalf, I express my solidarity with all the countries which are grappling with multiple challenges thrown up by the pandemic.
India Voluntary National Review Report 2020 is a comprehensive account of the adaptation and implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Now, apart from showing a review of progress on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the report also discusses at length the policy and enabling environment strengthening means of implementation and India's approach at localizing SDGs. Here's more.
Government of India's response to the pandemic has been articulated through the Honorable Prime Minister's vision of an Atmanirbhar Bharat, or a self-reliant India. This is in no sense implying a self-sufficient or an isolationist India. On the other hand, we remain supportive of the multilateral global economic order, whose robust, resilient and rapid response capabilities to major disruptions is established beyond doubt.
Pakistan has once again not kept its word and failed to provide India unimpeded, unhindered and unconditional consular access to Kulbhushan Jadhav. During the past year, India has requested Pakistan more than 12 times to provide consular access to Kulbhushan Jadhav. After extensive discussions, the Pakistani side conveyed that they were ready to organize consular access on the 16th of July 2020. India was assured that this consular access would be unimpeded, unhindered and unconditional. Two consular officers of the High Commission proceeded to the meeting with Jadhav. Regrettably, however, neither the environment nor the arrangements for the meeting were in accordance with the assurances given by Pakistan. The Ministry of External Affairs said in a statement the consular officers were not given unimpeded, unhindered and unconditional access to Sri Jadhav. On contrary, Pakistani officials with an intimidating demeanor were present in close proximity to Sri Jadhav and consular officers despite the protests of the Indian side. It was also evident from a camera that was visible that the conversation with Sri Jadhav was being recorded. Sri Jadhav himself was visibly under stress and indicated that clearly to the consular officers. The arrangements did not permit a free conversation between them. The consular officers could not engage with Sri Jadhav on his legal rights and were prevented from obtaining his written consent for arranging his legal representation. In the light of these circumstances, the Indian consular officers came to the conclusion that the consular access being offered by Pakistan was neither meaningful nor credible. After lodging a protest, they left the venue. We reiterate our commitment to ensure the safe return of Sri Jadhav to India and will decide on a future course of action in the light of the events today, is what the Ministry of External Affairs said. Now, moving on. India strongly protested against the construction of the Daimar Bhasha Dam in Pakistan to the Pakistan government. It will lead to submergence of a large part of land of Indian UTs of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. The Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson said that India condemns the attempt by Pakistan to bring about material changes to Indian territories under its illegal occupation. India has also consistently conveyed our protest and shared concerns with both China and Pakistan on all such projects in Indian territories under Pakistan's illegal occupation, where it has no locus standi.
Entire Union Territory of J&K and the Union Territory of Ladakh have been, are and will be an integral and inalienable part of India. We have strongly protested against the construction of this dam to the government of Pakistan. This dam will lead to submergence of a large part of land of the Indian Union Territories of J&K and Ladakh. And we condemn the continuous attempts by Pakistan to bring about material changes in Indian territories under its illegal occupation. We have also consistently conveyed our protest and shared concerns with both China and Pakistan on all such projects in the Indian territories under Pakistan's illegal occupation, where it has no locus standi.
The Rajasthan High Court has granted time to Sachin Pilot and 18 other dissident Congress MLAs to file an amended petition challenging the disqualification notices issued to them by the Rajasthan Speaker. The petition against the move to disqualify the rebel MLAs from the State Assembly was taken up for hearing at 3 p.m. But senior advocate Harish Salve, appearing for the petitioners, sought time to amend it. Salve argued that the MLAs wanted to challenge the constitutional validity of the notices and needed some time to file it afresh. The matter would now be heard by the division bench of the High Court. India has established bilateral air bubbles with France and the United States. The airlines of each country will operate international flights between these routes. Air France will operate 28 flights between Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru and Paris from July 18 to August 1. And American carrier United Airlines will be flying 18 flights between India and the United States from July 17 to July 31. The Civil Aviation Minister Hardeep Singh Puri told the media that similar arrangements with Germany and the UK are also being worked out.
As the economic activity picks up after the COVID-19 pandemic-induced lockdown, the international air corridors with many nations are also being activated on a case-by-case basis. India has established individual bilateral bubbles with France and the US. This arrangement will allow the airlines of each country in the pact to operate international flights. Similar arrangement with Germany and the United Kingdom will also be permitted soon.
Air France will be operating 28 flights on the Delhi, Mumbai and Bangalore sector and France, I think Paris, between 18th July to 1st August. Then in another case with the United States, we have an agreement for United to operate 18 flights between India and the US between 17 and 31st. But this is an interim one. We have a request from the Germans also. I think Lufthansa is almost done.
An air bubble is a bilateral arrangement with a set of regulations and restrictions in which the carriers of the two countries can operate international flights. Air France will be operating 28 flights between Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru and Paris from July 18th to August 1st. American carrier United Airlines will be flying 18 flights between India and the US from July 17th to July 31st. India is planning to establish a bubble with the UK soon. Under this agreement, there would be 2 flights per day between Delhi and London. From India, Air India will be operating flights to France and US under these bubbles. As far as privatization of the Air India is concerned, the centre has once again reassured that the interest of all employees will be kept in mind whenever the decision is made.
The question was, are you persisting with privatization? We don't have a choice. We have to. And I always say that Air India, when it is ready for privatization, it is a very attractive thing, but it will be done keeping in full view the interests of all those who have served this great airlines over a period of time.
Scheduled international passenger flights have been suspended in India since March 23rd. The government resumed domestic passenger flights on May 25th. A total of 6,87,000 stranded Indians were brought back under the Vande Bharat mission till July 15th. Centre is optimistic that by the time Diwali comes this year, India would have 55 to 60% of pre-COVID domestic flights operational. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Well, the flood situation in Assam remains grim so far across the entire state, affecting more than 39 lakh population. The Assam Chief Minister Sarbanand Sonowal visited the Kaziranga National Park to take stock of the flood situation, and in Bihar too, flood fury continues as major rivers are in spate. Whereas the country's commercial capital Mumbai and its suburbs are again experiencing heavy rain, which has resulted in waterlogging at several places. Here's a report.
Incessant rain over the past many days have led to floods in different parts of Assam. 26 districts are reeling under water, affecting over 39 lakh population of the state. The flood fury has caused death of 71 people till date. Besides that, various incidents of landslides across the state triggered by incessant rain have also killed 26 persons so far. Assam Chief Minister Sarbanand Sonowal has been leading state's efforts on relief and rescue and personally visiting relief camps and distribution centers. Teams of NDRF and SDRF are carrying out relief and rescue operations in the affected areas.
This is a third wave of flood. In this situation, the people of Assam in the 28 districts, they have to suffer and they have lost their cultivable land, their household properties, and also more than 80 lives in both flood, erosion and landsliding.
In Bihar also, flood fury continues as major rivers are in spate. Meanwhile, in Khagaria district, water from the rivers Kosi and Bagmati have entered the low-lying areas causing floods. In Darbhanga also, river water has entered the roads, causing disruption in road connectivity. In Maharashtra, Mumbai and adjoining areas are again experiencing heavy rain on Thursday, which has resulted in waterlogging at several places. The city has been witnessing heavy rain since Tuesday, and the Met Office has issued an orange alert for Mumbai, Thane and Palghar, with forecast of heavy to very heavy rain at isolated places, with Kamal Bora in Assam, Salman Haider in Patna and Shyama from Mumbai. News Night Desk, DD India.
News now about the COVID pandemic in the country. So the number of patients who have recovered from the virus continues to increase. The hospital infrastructure too has been ramped up, and it's a collaborative strategy between the centre and the states that has ensured that the growth of COVID cases is restricted to pockets in the country. Here's more.
India is battling the COVID-19 pandemic on a war footing. Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan has said that less than 2% of the COVID-affected patients are admitted in ICUs. 0.32% people are on ventilators. This testing capacity will be further enhanced to 10 lakh tests per day in the coming days.
रोज शाम को हम 7 बजे देखते हैं कि कितने लोग देश में वेंटिलेटर पे थे, ऑक्सीजन पे थे या आईसीयू में थे। तो मैंने देखा शायद कल शाम को, आज सुबह का डाटा है, उसमें सबसे कम लोग जो है वो वेंटिलेटर पर थे या ऑक्सीजन पे थे या आईसीयू में थे।
Tough measures taken to arrest the spread of corona pandemic have had the desired impact, resulting in continuous increase in the rate of recovered patients. A total of 20,783 people cured of COVID in the last 24 hours has taken the total number of recovered cases among COVID-19 patients to 6,12,814. The gap between recovered patients and active COVID-19 cases has further increased to 2,81,668. The recovery rate is 63.25%. The testing lab network in the country is further strengthened with 1,234 labs in the country, along with the use of rapid antigen tests, drive tests per million to more than 9,231. The collaborative strategy among centre and the states has also ensured that the growth of COVID cases is restricted to pockets in the country. Lockdown in some districts of Karnataka has also been made stringent. Roads in capital Bengaluru wore a deserted look and movement of people was at a bare minimum, while in Bihar, 15-day lockdown in force from Thursday deserted. This lockdown till 31st July will be done with stringent measures. With Aisha Khanam in Bengaluru and Salman Haider in Patna, News Night Desk, DD India.
Well, a highly anticipated ruling by Europe's top court has landed the striking down of a flagship EU-US data flows arrangement, and that's called Privacy Shield. The EU-US Privacy Shield was set up in 2016 to protect the personal data of Europeans when it is transferred across the Atlantic for commercial use. The same court also rejected its predecessor known as Safe Harbor in 2015. The EU Court of Justice on Thursday said in respect of certain surveillance programs, those provisions do not indicate any limitations on the power they confer to implement those programs or the existence of guarantees for potentially targeted non-US persons. 7 Turkish security personnel died when a reconnaissance plane crashed in eastern Van province. The plane crashed on a mountain at an altitude of 2,200 feet. The last contact from the plane was received at 10:32 p.m. That's about 1:02 a.m. Indian Standard Time on Wednesday, and the plane disappeared from the radar 13 minutes later. Accident investigators are working to determine the cause of the crash. British judges on Thursday ruled that Shamima Begum, a London schoolgirl who travelled to Syria to join Islamic State, should be allowed to return to the United Kingdom to challenge the removal of her British citizenship. Begum left the UK to join ISIS when she was 15, but now she wants to return. Her British citizenship was revoked on security grounds. The Court of Appeal judges said that the only way Begum would be able to have a fair and effective appeal of that decision would be if she was permitted to come back to the UK. A sculpture of a Black Lives Matter protester has been removed from the plinth where a statue of a slave trader, Edward Colston, once stood. The sculpture of Jen Reid was erected on Wednesday but removed by Bristol City Council just over 24 hours later. Reid had been photographed standing on the empty plinth after the Colston statue was pulled down during protests. The black raisin statue of Reid, called A Surge of Power, was created by artist Mark Quinn, and it was designed to be a temporary installation to continue the conversation about racism. The Swedish activist Greta Thunberg urged European leaders on Thursday to take emergency action on climate change, saying that people in power had practically given up on the possibility of handing over a decent future to the coming generations. She said that we need to see it all. We need to see it as, above all, an existential crisis. And as long as it's not being treated as a crisis, we can have as many of these climate change negotiations and talks, conferences as possible. It won't change a thing. A claim quoted by an eminent English language newspaper in an article giving the impression that a Delhi police order is biased. However, the facts check have said that the claim is far from the truth. The Delhi police has rebutted the claim as highly misleading, and that the article conveniently ignores the spirit of the order. And with that, we conclude News Night for tonight. Thanks very much for being with us. Namaskar.
हिंदुस्तान एक ऐसा मुल्क है, अनेक प्रकार के लोग रहते हैं, बहुत से अलग अलग मजहब है, अलग अलग जाति है और अलग अलग हमारा पोशाक है, अलग अलग हमारी जबान है। ऐसा कोई मुल्क दुनिया में नहीं है काम ये है कि हम हिंदुस्तान में कोई भी प्रांत के हैं, हम हिंदुस्तानी हैं और हमारा प्रथम कर्तव्य हिंदुस्तान की हिफाजत, हिंदुस्तान की रक्षा।
खबरें कठोर इरादों की, खबरें अनगिनत हौसलों की, खबरें सपनों की ऊंची उड़ानों की, खबरें सोच बदलने की, खबरें असंभव से आगे निकल जाने की।
अच्छी खबर अच्छा करने की प्रेरणा का सबसे बड़ा कारण बनती है। मैं तो देशवासियों से भी अपील करूं कि गुड न्यूज इंडिया भी हमने देखना चाहिए।
आम लोगों की खास कहानियां, प्रेरणा, जोश और उम्मीद देती पॉजिटिव खबरें। गुड न्यूज इंडिया, रविवार रात 9 बजे।
नमस्कार, न्यूज नाइट में आप सबका स्वागत है। आपके साथ मैं हूं ममता